Hey folks, welcome back. I'm excited you're back. It feels like it's been forever. It's been like 2 weeks. Um, I'm glad I finally had a moment to sit down and finally talk to you about La Luna. Because Luna is wonderful and beautiful and perfect. And well, not perfect. Nothing's perfect. But great. And I'm excited to talk about it. And I'm excited to talk to you about where we're going. Because I realize we're about to hit a turning point. Woo! Because turning point means we get to move on to new material. And new material is great because it's exciting. It's exciting for me as it is for you because this stuff is all really great and I love it. But I've been talking about this stuff for months and new stuff is great. So, but let's not get there yet. We're going to talk about La Luna this week. Then we're going to say some concluding things about our films with heart. And after all this, every film is going to be soulless and cold and mean and no. Everything has heart, but we're going to stop focusing exclusively on that after this week, and we're going to move on to our fourth and final chapter. And that's going to be really cool. There are only 2 films in that chapter. 4, 2. I like my numbers today. So there are going to be 2 films for that. They are going to focus on kind of more modern technology and how they integrate that into their new work. And then we are going to say some concluding things about shorts as a whole and how they integrate into the features. And then, who knows what's going to come next? Because we're going to be done with our shorts. Well, we could be. Who knows? I could decide to look at the shorts that we didn't cover. Or I could just move on to the features. Or I could, just like talk about cross-stitch and what the variety of different t-shirts I have. Who knows? We'll find out. I'll let you know as soon as I do. But if you have any thoughts, there's comments down below. And no one's ever left me a comment before. You could leave me a comment. It could be so cool. Anyways, though, now that we've geeked out, or I've geeked out about that for a little bit, let's just talk about La Luna, because that's what you're here to hear about. And La Luna is, as I said, awesome. So, La Luna, 2012. It went before the film Brave, a underrated film that had a bit of a rocky production history. But you should all go check it out because it is also visually stunning, and Merida is a really interesting character that is now kind of fully in the Disney princess canon, which is awesome. But, so, it went before Brave, La Luna did, and it is another product of Pixar's awesome and cool open call policy when it comes to short film development. If you forgot what that is, or if that was totally an unclear sentence, which it was. In order to develop short films, Pixar has an open call for submissions, and anyone in the company can show up, and as long as they have 3 different ideas, they can give the executives a pitch. And when they do, they choose their favorites. And that is how we got Boundin' and the kind of deeply personal story about Montana. And then we have Partly Cloudy and the deeply personal story about communicating using different languages or no language at all. And then we end up with La Luna, which is by director Enrico Casarova. And it's very Italian. Enrico Casarova is Italian. And everything in the film, from the look to the characters, even the music, is meant to invoke Italy. That is deliberate. And so that's kind of one key aspect to both the story and the look. Other things, it is a return for fables. In Pixar. Fables have a long history in animated shorts. If you go to Disney Silly Symphonies, a lot of them are fairy tales and fables or fable-like. And if you, like I said, Boundin' also had a fairy tale-like structure. And so it's familiar territory. But what makes La Luna different from those films is that Casarova takes information from the stories he heard in his childhood, but combines them with his own childhood experiences. And so his touch on the film is far more important, and the setting becomes host to this familiar interpersonal conflict. So the setting comes from the fairy tales, but the driving conflict and the source of all the action comes from Casarova's life. The way I like to think about it is think about things like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, these big, epic, fantastical pieces that have really personal stories at the heart of them, that the reason they connect to so many different audiences is because they are saying familiar things, or they are saying comforting things that we can internalize and bring into our own lives. At the very best, that's what Pixar ends up doing in most of its cases, and La Luna is no different. And it also, La Luna represents this kind of middle ground between the simpler Boundin and the more original Partly Cloudy, because it's this deeply personal film, yet made by directors and animators who have learned from the Pixar canon. It is a really important thing to think about, in that it is a wealth of shared experiences that enables Pixar films to remain Pixar films, even with different directors with different visions. So this is Enrico Casarova's film. It is very personal to him. It has his touch. We can identify it as such. But it is also a Pixar film, so it has learned from everything we have talked about so far, and it has learned from the features that we have not talked about as much. It has learned from the Pixar corporate story structure. It has learned from Pixar, like the artists at Pixar's influences. Everything that goes into this film as well. So that's really important to remember for this film and for films going forward. They are a wonderful combination of the director and the studio. So, the middle ground approach in La Luna leads to a different approach to Heart than Partly Cloudy and Bounding, because it uses its simpler story to accentuate more elaborate visuals. This film is visuals, visuals, visuals. What Boundin did with song and Partly Cloudy did with action, La Luna does with image. Casarova claims that one of the film's central goals is, quote, to transport the audience for 5 minutes to that sense of wonder and joy and curiosity for things that they felt just as children. It amplifies the awe, end quote. It amplifies the awe experienced in the flying sequence of Partly Cloudy, and in order to achieve that goal, Casarova needs to create and depict a world worthy of that wonder. So that swooping feeling we got in Partly Cloudy, and that kind of awe, sweetness that we kind of reveled in, also in Partly Cloudy, also in Boundin, Casarova needs to create a world where he can do the same. I like to think of Casarova's quote in regards to Disney, in Walt Disney. I don't know if I quoted it so far in the blog, but if I haven't, I'm not actually going to do it now, but later on I will bring it up, because there's a fantastic Walt Disney quote about appealing to everyone's inner child. And that is one of the wonderful things about studying animated film as adults, because even though a lot of them have children as a target audience, they are not exclusively children's films. And the way they get around that is to appeal to everyone's inner child or innocence. And this is not going into crazy politics. This is really, truly just innocent stuff that stays with us from when we are a baby to when we are an adult, that are kind of universally appealing. This is what Casarova is trying to invoke. And so try to think of entering Casarova's film as you would think entering a Disney amusement park or watching your favorite film as a kid. It is trying to evoke the same things that are both child-friendly and universal. Got it? It's a little confusing, I know. Hopefully I mentioned that quote before and explained it better, or hopefully I will do so in the future. Anyways, it's important, but let's move on. So, he needs the audience to see the world through a child's eyes, also so it cannot be familiar to them. That's the other thing we're going for here. When you think again about Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, one of the big appeals, epic, fantastical, something different. We do not always want to turn on our TVs or our computers or whatever you're watching it on and enter into a world that we could see not on a screen. Sometimes it's really interesting to see other people's perspectives on things. Sometimes, though, we want to escape into something totally new and different, and that is something La Luna is doing. So, the emotion of the world ends up coming through in patient, awe-inspiring shots meant to enamor the audience with their beauty at the same time as telling them a relatively simple yet still touching story. Similar to Luxo Jr., Luna takes advantage of the familiar, pre-existing familial relationships of Casarova's childhood to drive the narrative forward. The child who stars in the film has reason to visit the moon because of this family tradition, and that all adds emotional depth to the journey. And the way Casarova arranges this is by using a familiar competition between a grandfather and a father, and this is one that Casarova was familiar with in his own family and brought it to the film. And the grandson, again our protagonist, is stuck in the middle as the two men try and teach him the family trade. This is the both familiar and familial conflict we are using as our basis for our story. And Rooney in the familiar means time does not have to be spent building the relationship between the characters, and the focus can therefore be pulled to the look of the film. So we want to focus on the visuals here. We do not want to focus exclusively on the conflict. And so by simplifying the conflict, we can focus on the visuals. So it's a very deliberate choice. And La Luna's look and so therefore we want to focus on La Luna's look. And so La Luna's look is inspired by watercolors and is the film's main attraction. And if the visuals were around to support the story in Partly Cloudy, the story in La Luna is there to support the visuals. That is a good place to take a break. So take a breather and get ready to dive right into the story itself. Cool? Awesome. I'll see you really soon.